Creepshow, released in 1982 and directed by horror maestro Romero, was a turning point in the career of the respected independent filmmaker. It had taken Romero over a decade to get to the point where his self-taught filmmaking techniques and hard-learned experience in the independent world directing sports documentaries, adverts and low-budget features would finally pay off and give him a shot at the big time.
The Calgon Story. What happens when a Calgon research team and their submarine are reduced to micro size and sent on a dangerous mission deep inside a washing machine?
Creepshow was the first time in the filmmaker's career that he and his Pittsburgh-based crew of dedicated Hollywood outsiders would have the chance to work with a bigger budget and a major distribution company.
The Warner Brothers logo was on the film. And it was, for all of us, like a little shock. Instead of making those little movies in Pittsburgh, this is a real movie. It has a logo.
What I respect about Creepshow, even more than its major successes, one of which is that it was one of Romero's best received films and held the #1 spot for over a week in the box office charts. But it is also a great accomplishment that it was Romero's intimate vampire film Martin, released in 1977, made on a budget of $250,000 and not Dawn of the Dead, that will catch the eye of Warner Brothers executives and finally put Romero into the ring with the big film distributors.
My name is Martin. I'm 84 years old. I'd like to be normal. I just have a sickness. The only way I can survive is by drinking blood.
Yeah, I made a film called Martin. It showed at the festival that became Sundance, and some Warner Brothers executives were there to see it.
Warner Brothers had liked Martin and asked Romero to meet Stephen King, whose novel Salem's Lot was being produced as a feature film at the studio. This of course made sense. Let's put these two vampire horror creators together. This meeting of these two horror legends would be of major importance in both of their respective film careers. Creepshow finally gave Romero a decent budget, but also gave King a shot at writing his first screenplay based on some of his own work and a few original narratives. It was time for both of these titans to put their work to the test of mainstream audiences. A turning point in both of their careers.
George is a ferociously talented director, and I think we got something cooking in this movie.
Now, you're also in this film,
Yeah.
aren't you? Something has gone wrong here.
Well, actually, what went wrong was when my agent said yes. No.
When listening to Romero in commentary of the film, it is made clear how much of an upscale production this was for his team. Romero stating that this was the first time that he had made extensive use of Foley sound effects. And this was something he had never had the budget to do before in over a dozen independent productions.
And listen to the Foley on this, man. This was the first time that I even knew what Foley was. And all the footsteps and little jingling of her jewelry and all of that.
Oh, yeah. Totally, and that's the first time you really worried about
on a sound stage somewhere by Foley artists. I didn't even know what Foley was.
John Harrison, who worked as Romero's first AD at his production company Laurel Productions, who is now a celebrated director in his own right, also stated that it was the first time that the crew had had the opportunity to work on purpose-built sets. All of their previous works having been filmed completely on locations for budgetary reasons.
But it was really fun because for the first time I experienced what working on a soundstage could be like as opposed to working on location, which is what most of our work had been.
This opportunity really shows in the work, and you can tell by the creativity of the set design by Cletus Anderson and the beautiful comic book lighting of the film, that the crew were having a blast, and for the first time in most of their careers, they had a whole workshop of technical toys to play with.
We took over this old high school that was abandoned and created what was essentially a soundstage in there.
John Harrison himself would go on to direct many fantastic works, such as the epic miniseries Frank Herbert's Dune for television and the original adaptation of Clive Barker's Book of Blood. Harrison was also responsible for the now classic original score of Creepshow, showing us once again that it was the dedication of this small group of filmmakers, who often did double duty in many roles, that made the successes of Creepshow possible. Special effects legend Tom Savini, who would become known as the king of splatter in the 1980s because of his work on such films as Friday the 13th and Rosemary's Killer, created the high number of special effects in the film, and it's said that he did it all with basically one 17-year-old effects assistant.
That was the guy who falls back in the water was my assistant, Daryl Ferrucci, 17-year-old Daryl. It was me and a 17-year-old kid that did all the effects and all these things.
The talent of this group of friends and teammates cannot be underestimated to the success of the production. Romero, like many other independents, is the glue that keeps all this together. To work on a moderate budget, such as Creepshow had, everyone had to put in the work. And in the early decades of Romero's career, he made people want to work with him, and that is a huge part of the man's talent. These people were doing it for George and their teammates as much as wanting to make a hit.
Boy, what fun this was. And it was the innocence. We weren't yet swallowed by the studio system and by all the garbage.
I mean, it was never a job. It was, just
hey.
fun, yeah.
Right. And this is part of Creepshow's pleasure. The film winks at us, the audience, and includes us in the best possible way, and invites an audience in to have a good time with the filmmakers.
Let's all do the sound when the tombstone hits them, okay?
Have some friends over, and everybody do the sound right at that moment.
And look for the ashtray.
Romero was much more than just a horror filmmaker. His legacy is a testament to hard work and passion. And that is why this isn't just a review of Creepshow or a video essay, but it's also my personal thanks and appreciation to the man who worked his butt off on all of his films. In remembrance of Knightridres, Romero's previous film, Hollywood A-lister Ed Harris talks with deep respect for Romero and his process.
I recall even on Knightridres, he was under a lot of pressure, and George was, you know, he was working overtime. I mean, he was really busting his butt to get the picture made. We were just trying to make the best film we could.
Harris didn't have to do this, but it shows the appreciation for the work that Romero's contributors have and the passion they share. It is the man's sheer talent and determination, as well as holding the whole thing together, that makes all of his films stand the test of time. And I think us fans enjoy the hell out of his work so much because we know that he is a filmmaker that worked outside of the Hollywood system to make the films in the early days that he wanted to make.
I spent my life trying to convince people to join up with me. Let's do this. We can make a film. We can make a film right here in Pittsburgh. We can do this. We can, you know. We were the only guys that had the real dream, had the dream in harness.
When Romero did make the leap to Hollywood with Monkey Shines and Another King collaboration with the Dark Half, the system really beat him down, and he would eventually return to the independent world in Canada to make his final few films. It is Romero's independent spirit that we love. His legacy is that if you have the heart, respect, and determination to go after a dream, it can be yours. This is what we can learn from Creepshow. What is most inspiring to me as a filmmaker myself is that Romero really put in the legwork to get to this point in his career. After creating the iconic Night of the Living Dead, Romero and the Pittsburgh Independents had to deal with a slew of failures such as There's Always Vanilla, The Crazies and Season of the Witch, which were all shot on small budgets, most for well under $100,000. But Romero never gave up.
After Night of the Living Dead, the disappointment of doing 3 films that sort of nobody saw was immense. And The Crazies at least opened. It was at one of the early screenings of The Crazies that I met Richard Rubenstein, and that's sort of when we started to do things, you know, professionally.
Creepshow didn't just come from nowhere. By 1982, Romero was really getting to know his craft. And you can see this in the move up in quality that Creepshow has. It shows that Romero was ready to take on an ambitious project because he knew that with his experience and his crew, he could achieve anything. And that is a testament to great independent filmmakers. This is why Creepshow was a milestone in Romero's career for me. It was his first real step cinematically out of the independent world. Creepshow looks like $1 million. But it was these past works that helped him achieve Creepshow. He knew how to make compelling emotional stories because of his work on Martin and There's Always Vanilla. He could do huge adventure movies because of his experience directing ambitious action sequences on moderate budgets, such as in The Crazies and Dawn of the Dead. And he now could tell an even better cinematic story because his love of horrific visuals and the morals of EC Comics was shared with one of the most successful writers of our time.
Tell us this looks like it's going to be a comic book, this thing.
Yeah, I'm doing it with George Romero. And we were both scared to death by these comic books when we were kids. The ECs, the horror comics, the things your mother would take away from you.
Yeah.
And that's what it's based on.
Romero's friendship with Stephen King and their combined talents led to the fantastic screenplay of Creepshow that is as brilliant as it is ambitious. But together they knew they could do this movie. Creepshow was the culmination of many years' work, and as an audience, we get the benefit of it. We also get the chance to be part of this great friendship and camaraderie between collaborators such as King and Romero, Harrison and Gornick, and many of the great crew who worked on this movie. It's a work that is more than the sum of its parts. It's a film made with passion, craftsmanship, and talent that is a testament to these low-budget filmmakers who made their mark in the world. And for genre fans like us, the world over, Creepshow will remain a classic of independent spirit and great filmmaking.
It's because a lot of the appeal of the horror movies doesn't have anything to do with gross or violent or, you know, any of that stuff. I think what it has to do with is fantasy and take your mind for a walk and your imagination.
Creepshow is a film that is full of the love of EC Comics. It has the great writing of Stephen King, great direction, great set design, and it just works as a movie, and for my money, it's one of the best comic book themed films that we have. It's a testament to the hard work of a team of people who had a dream and knew that together they could achieve anything. I think Creepshow is an independent masterpiece. So thanks for listening to this work on George Romero's Creepshow. If you'd like to see more films about the work of George Romero and other filmmakers, please remember to like and subscribe. And as always, thanks for listening.